Panel discussion on AIF in India. AIF stands for Alternative Investment Fund, and it is AIF in India, Apna time aa gaya. I'll just introduce to you the moderator for the session. So Devang Jhaveri is a chartered accountant by profession, a IT professional, having worked across banks, broking firms, also heavily into social work. And if you have recently, you have caught up his interview on money control. If you have not, you should just Google Devang Jhaveri money control. You can read all about his journey. And he started using algorithms a few years back. I was lucky enough to get a portion of the privilege of managing a portion of his money. And a lot of it goes into social cause and welfare and public good. So Devang, the stage is yours for now. Thank you.
Am I audible? Oh. Hello? Am I audible now? Okay. Thank you. I'll briefly introduce, I'll sit myself first, and briefly introduce you to the panel for today. The panel for today, we have Anil Ghelani. Anil Ghelani is Vice Chairperson of CFA Society. He's the Head of Passive Investments at DSP Investments, and he's also AIF Industry 40 under 40 ka, he got a winner, he was a winner for AIF. So he's Anil Ghelani for us. The second panelist is Mr. Gaurav Raizada. Gaurav is founder and Chief Investment Manager, CIO of iRich Master Trust AIF. So he basically runs the AIF. He is the Faculty of Finance at IIM Ahmedabad as well. Also will introduce Rakesh ji, Mr. Rakesh Pujara. So Mr. Rakesh Pujara is was ex-CEO Naman Securities, and currently he founded his own company which runs long-short funds. It's called Compounding Wealth Advisors. Mr. Rakesh Pujara. And last but not the least, Mr. Vivek Gadodia, who has had a very good run. I would say he's one of the very experienced person in hedge funds or long-short industry. He's had, he was I think one of the youngest guy to get on in the field, and he started his business in around 2012, and I was privileged to be one of his among his first customers, and he's running his long-short hedge fund since 2012. So all of these guys are pretty much in the industry, and I will kick off this session, telling you something about AIF. So how many people here knows about AIF? Okay, I think at least 30%, okay, which is a good number. So, AIF is nothing but alternative investment fund. And so how many people of you, know about mutual funds? I think, so those who have not raised their hands are sleeping. So, because everyone knows about mutual funds, so those who are not raising their hands are asleep. So I understood that 30% was actually 50%, because I'm sure in those 30% some of you were sleeping. Anyway, so everyone knows about mutual funds. So we have, in our Indian context, we have mutual funds where we have access to park funds. But mutual fund is a long only thing, it's like it's always going long. You have no other arsenal, no other weapon in your arsenal to actually do something else than a long strategy. You also need something else, and I think AIF gives a little bit of answer to that, and that's why we have AIF. So AIF, when I speak of AIF, I'm going to speak of AIF category 3. So category 3 AIF is specially meant for hedge funds, and that's what our focus will be in this discussion. moving on to the discussion, little about AIF in India started in around 2012, and we have currently around 91 registered AIFs, and on an average in last 2 years, in 2018 there were 27 registrations, and 2017 there were 27 registrations, 2018 we had 24 registrations of AIF, 2018 being a challenging year, I think still the AIF industry is picking up, and I think it's here to stay, and that's where people will move towards. I will kick off this panel discussion with my first question, which will, I think I should direct it to Anil, because Anil has been instrumental with SEBI in forming the AIFs. So, give us some history about AIFs. How did AIF get its place where it is now in India?
Sure, Devang. Thanks a lot. And first of all, wish you all a very good afternoon. I know this is one of the most challenging time slot that we've got, and hence we have a very powerful panel of 5 people in front of you. I think more than the people, the topic is very interesting.
Yes.
And the title has been created very well. Apna time aa gaya hai, just after lunch. So I think from that perspective, in realistic context, for AIFs, I think everything has fallen in place.
Yes.
It has happened over the past about a decade now. So I still remember back in the day, more than a decade back in 2007, we had started at our end paper trading, a very simple strategy, using pure quant-based approach, using let's say momentum and 1 or 2 other factors to identify certain stocks where we can go long and certain stocks where we can go short.
Okay.
Maybe not as fancy as today's type of
Now
systems.
when you say
existed.
we, as in you were with
We had DSP.
you were still
that
with
time my
DSP.
company was
Okay.
called, DSP Merrill Lynch, then
Okay.
DSP BlackRock, but
Okay.
like with the same entity, if
Okay.
I may say it that way. So in those days, as a mutual fund company in India, there was no permission available to short futures or go naked short of any particular line item. And in those days, not such very fancy tools also were available. So we used, of course, in some way it has a lot of capability, a tool called MATLAB.
Yes.
But of course, it was a very expensive tool, and even for us to get it implemented, we had to take a lot of approvals. That, oh, I want to do so much cost. With the use of MATLAB, we created a quant model which will identify 20 to 25 stocks to go long and approximately 20 to 25 to go short. But we didn't have a platform to run it.
Okay.
So we started paper trading with the intent after 1 year of, or forward trading or forward track, however we define it in today's context, that after that track record is created, I will be in a position to launch it in a Cayman Island or some vehicle platform offshore.
Yeah.
After that, the strategy saw some bit of a turbulence. Market little bit had some turbulence because of the global financial crisis. So we never could have enough demand. And we got ready again in 2011. But by that time, SEBI had started working on the AIF guidelines as we see it today.
Okay.
So SEBI put it out in public domain for comments. And anybody knows, I mean, how many categories they are defined? Today there are 3 categories, right? As Devang mentioned, 3. Right now there are 3. But earlier when they put it out for public comments, there were 9 categories. So there was one separate category only for long short, one was for social venture funds, private equity separate, venture capital separate. Then over the period, a lot of people worked with them. We gave a lot of inputs to SEBI about how they should structure it, some global best practices. And then the current evolution of 3 categories. One is social venture, infra funds, etc., which go under Cat 1, category 1. Category 3 is the category which all of us are interested in terms of long short, hedge fund, anything that uses complex derivative strategies, like maybe iRage uses. And category 2 was residual, which includes everything else, like, debt funds or whatever might be the case. So that's how the evolution happened. 2013 was when the regulation actually came out in black and white. Of course, at that point of time, from then and now, again, a lot of evolution has happened. But so in 2014 was when first 2-3 hedge funds kickstarted. We kickstarted into the market. 1 or 2 other boutique firms started. So from there till now, a huge level has changed.
Yes.
So you mentioned about 90, but that is I think only this particular category. All put together, there is a very large number. Maybe a couple of colleagues like Vivek.
No, 91 is registered as Cat 3.
Cat 3.
Cat
Total
3.
number of AIFs is something about 500.
500.
Maybe large players like BP2S, which Vivek runs, they support all the AIF entry into India. So they have a large number of AIFs which have now got registered. So what I'm trying to say is that the awareness, the platform, the regulatory oversight, everything is now fallen in place for AIFs to really pick up in a very big way. So I think we are in a position where for all of us over here also, whether we use some quant-based strategies or whether we use a combination of quant and some fundamental analytics to create some portfolio which needs shorting and which needs leverage. Because no other platform in the current regulatory framework allows that other than the AIF Cat 3. So for many of the strategies, as we want to scale up beyond a point or we want to approach external clients and operate in a meaningful way, possibly one of the solution or one of the platform which can be used is AIF category 3. So maybe next couple of years later, this 90 would have suddenly shot up to maybe 500 only for the Cat 3 AIFs.
True. I mean, you had an excellent journey. I mean, just tell us why did they started focusing on AIF? What was the need? As in 2012, what was that need that that they thought, "Bus, we have to do it now, otherwise we won't." So, is there a compelling need, or what is the environment around elsewhere in the world, if you would know?
World over, there are various jurisdictions where long-short funds or hedge funds are permitted. A lot of the India domiciled funds were not able to do that. So like as I mentioned, we were also planning that this same strategy, I will just launch it in a global platform. So that had a risk of the capital being sourced in any global market, but being housed in some other country and then coming into India like a FPI or a foreign FII in those days, which would have two outcomes. One is that the local market regulator SEBI would have slightly limited control on the vehicle because it's not housed in a SEBI framework. And second, it still appears as an external flow into India. So how to capture the large local community who wants to invest in those strategies becomes challenging.
True.
Hence, the entire evolution happened and enabler happened. And then all other ancillary products under alternative space, whether it was private equity, venture capital, everything got merged into the same umbrella.
So you mentioned a word called long short quite a few times in your conversation. So I think I'd post a question to Vivek. He's been operating long short strategies for a while now. So what's the importance of long short? And yeah, today also we saw some short presentation on a short strategy, intraday short strategy. So what's the importance of a long short combination portfolio or a long short strategy as such?
Yeah, so thanks Anil for setting up the context extremely correctly. And I remember when we were briefly interacting around the journey of yours, which started from the regulatory side, was extremely interesting to take up and understand how the context where it comes from. Coming to long short, if you look at the market data, I just look at 10, 15 years of data wherever I have been in markets, or I go back in history, I study history and look at data. Markets are not always going up. That's, extremely evident with the data. There is no debate or refutation about that. So take a year like 2018, right? We saw 2017 where there was an extremely amazing bull run, and if all of us were making money and we thought it's us who's making the money, well, bad luck, sorry, it was the market, right? You just had to buy any stock in January of 2017, and by the end of November, December, it would be up. Sorry, but it's not us, it's the market, right? The market gave us that opportunity. What happened in 2018? Well, we've seen that time and again, right? So call it, you saw the CMT video where you say the price always goes far away from the intrinsic value, and then it comes down below the intrinsic value. So we are never in an equilibrium state or whatever, right? Are we always like in a nirvana or equilibrium state? Far from it, right?
Yes.
So the market is nothing but a reflection of our own human tendency, greed, fear, emotion and all, right? The price is a reflection of that. So it's never going to be in perfect equilibrium. That creates opportunities on both the long and the short side. Now, the need is that if I go into a bear market year or a period of years where there is a bearish market phase, am I going to just hold on to a long only portfolio and wait it out like a long-term investor like Mr. Buffet does? Or would I want to also take the opportunity of, having a lower overall, less volatile return in my long only portfolio by allocating some portion of it to an alternative investment? So alternative is nothing but alternative to the long. If I can smoothen, my equity curve, so to say the money curve as an investor, and ride out the volatility of a downside of like 60%, which we have seen in 2008. Some people may call it an exception, but I think it's the norm. In financial markets, the data has always shown it will go extremely 5, 10, even 15 sigma away from the normal distribution. The Punjab National Bank price stock movement, and I know the smile on your face, because the day when the recap was announced and it went up 45% in a day, that is a 15 sigma event, which is possibility in few, I don't know how many, 1 into thousands or lakhs of years, I don't know. The mathematical genius is here, he will know. So that happens, right, again. So the need is to, create a smoother curve.
Yeah, but in the Indian context, what is happening is we have seen the market always going up because we are a developing nation with a good population. In that context as well, I'm sure you have your reasons that a short strategy or a long short is needed.
Yeah, I mean, the always definition is varying, right? Like you could be a patient like you are a techno-funda investor, with you understand that, yeah, in 1, 2 years or 3 year cycle, there'll be a year where you won't make money, and you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe am I okay, or are some people okay with that? I don't know. I'm not okay. Like when market falls, I want to be making absolute return. Like I don't effectively care if BJP comes or Congress comes or whatever happens, if there's an earthquake in Turkey or blah blah. I don't care. My aim is to make absolute returns.
Okay.
Right? Irrespective of what happens to the benchmark.
Yes.
So that's the goal. That's the bottom. I think clients.
Maybe I'll highlight one more thing to that, because as you said, for clients typically, and how when a financial advisor or somebody in a mutual fund company looks at a individual client's portfolio or the portfolio of a large family office, you would want to have them generate some return and also factor in the risk that is being taken to generate that return, whether it's downside risk of not generating any return or having a kind of a volatility in the portfolio. So typically, you would like to allocate multiple asset classes.
Yes.
Now, traditional asset class which you can allocate is equity, fixed income. Leave out the real asset and everything for the moment in capital markets.
In capital market, equity and
Fixed income. Okay. So, and then we'll take exact data. Let's say last 5 year data if you look at 2013 through 18. So that has some years of exceptionally good returns, negative years also, and then again flat year like 2018.
Yes.
So we've done some analysis over the last 5 years, 2014 through end of 2018. If a client has a portfolio of, let's say, 70% equities, 30% fixed income.
Okay.
Good mix, I mean,
Yes.
broad level type of a mix. Across these 5 years, we saw some period of downside return, but point to point CAGR, this portfolio would have delivered about 11% CAGR return.
CAGR.
As you said, overall market is going up, though there was a down period in between, in the 2015 and then again 2018, almost flattish period. And the risk in the portfolio was about 9%. So the return per unit of risk is about 1.18. So one would think, yeah, fine, it's a good number. I mean, you are delivering positive return. But today in Indian context, as you said, you always want a little bit something better at a lower risk.
Yes.
Many of the corporate entities, let's say as I mentioned some family offices, they are running operational businesses which have ROEs in excess of 15, 16, 17%.
Yes.
So to such a person, if you say, okay, I'll give you some strategy which will give you 11%, what am I doing? I mean, so if we add an element of about 20 to 25% alternatives, and by alternatives right now I'll go with the classic definition what Vivek mentioned and what you highlighted in the beginning, long short fund, basically which will give people capability to short.
So I think everything I agree with you, except for the only the single fact that the 10% 12-11 is not very attractive, because I think Gaurav will touch
I'm
on
not
that for
saying-
one reason, and he'll be very angry. Reason is because of he'll talk about the volatility of his product
No, I
in
completely
the 10
understand.
11%,
I completely
and
understand. So what I
maybe
mean-
Gaurav could.
I just meant it that with adding some alternative asset class, you can deliver slightly better return with lower level of
With
risk.
lower. Now let's look at what dimension of risk what Gaurav would talk about maybe on the your product.
So basically, it's audible? Yeah. So basically, when Vivek was talking about long short and when Devang was talking about long short, when we say long short, we have a very generic idea of, okay, we'll go long this and short this. But if you look at in the context of what US or European markets have done, so there could be something like an AQR Investments who are basically value-based funds. They identify which have long value, in which they can basically benefit from value, and in which they see that it's overvalued and they go short on that. Then there are funds which basically purely play momentum, and they are having funds in excess of what maybe $1 trillion under their asset under management. And what essentially what we are trying to do here in the AIF framework is basically that let's say that I ask you to estimate what is the fair value of a given investment. So let's say, for example, DHFL or for example, Jet Airways. It's very, very difficult to ascribe a value. You can use a DDF model or whatever kind of a model. But what essentially happens is that if I ask you to ascribe value of Jet Airways with respect to Indigo, then the human mind starts to work. Then you can say, okay, I like this more because it has more value inherent into it. Whichever way you look at define value in those terms. So what happens is that creation of a portfolio which you can go long and short will basically put the belief system that you have at work. And in that sense, what happens is that if you have a single asset, it can go up and down and all of that. But if you have multiple assets, say for example, in a very simple sense, let's say take pair trading. The resultant standard deviation of the spread between two assets is comparatively far lower. It can be higher, but usually it's far, far lower. And the kind of return that it gives you is also in the favor of a human mind working that this is the relative return that I'm getting with respect to another asset. So in that sense, it's more, it's more easily digestible for an investor from the perspective of using it as a product. And why is it an alternate is because, see, long-term value building is basically another ball game. But what happens is when markets like Japan, when markets which have not given any kind of return over the last years, over so many years. So in that sense, what investors are looking for is some kind of a portfolio allocation to strategies which can generate to them some kind of a gross return, which basically is at least 1.5 to 2 times that of the standard deviation. And it's far more palatable in that sense.
So just to add slightly to what you're saying, I was also coming from the fact that I think you run a index arb product, index arbitrage product with 10-11% annualized return with a volatility or drawdown of say 0.5% is what I understand. There's virtually very, very low drawdown. And coming to maybe the talk on where Rakeshji could add about, if we talk about only return, or is it risk-adjusted return that matters? Is the context only return or is it
No, before we
risk-adjusted
come to
return?
Rakeshji, I would like to, in your AIF, what are the kind of products that you have? I mean, you run an AIF and we really want to know what kind of products.
So essentially, if you, we are basically an algorithmic trading firm. So the firm that we have been running for like 10 years. And in 2017, when we were basically brainstorming at our firm, we decided that AIF is the next thing that we are going to do. So आपने जो लिखा है कि time आ गया, 2 साल पहले आ गया. And then we decided that we are going to launch an AIF in which we'll play to our strengths, which is basically trading, execution-based models and so on. And there we said that, okay, what is the kind of product that is needed by the market? So we realized that there are long funds, there are long short funds and so on. But where exactly is the gap in the market? And when we realized that is that something which is FD plus and which is kindly very secure. So in that sense, what we did was we basically ideated and we came across this product, which is basically a hedged product, nearly an arbitrage between equity futures and the index futures. And we started around last year in August, and we are delivering around pre-tax around 14% with a Sharpe of 5.
Wow.
And with maybe a drawdown of 0.2%.
Sorry, I told 0.5. I heard 0.2.
So, and that too is basically because of the MTM fluctuations.
Okay.
So, in that sense. But what we have realized is that if you are delivering post-tax 14%, which essentially means 8% post-tax, what happens is that there are corporate treasuries who are very interested in, because for them, what is an alternative? Their alternative is a fixed income fund, an alternative is basically an FD or a corporate FD fund and so on. And there they are getting something like a 5% post-tax. So here, an extra 3% with minimum risk per se.
Yes.
So that is where we ideated a couple of years back, and we said that this is a space to enter. Because in India, if you realize right now, hedge fund industry is in an infancy. We have PMSs, which are long only. We have mutual funds, which are long only. And across the world, there's a large hedge fund industry, which has matured. So in terms of global trend, maybe in 10 years, I won't be sitting here and saying long short. Everybody will know what a long short is. And right now, this is the period when we should basically look to enter the market, thinking from the perspective of what people have launched abroad and how it can be basically, brought into an Indian context from that sense.
So, coming to Rakesh ji, he is a veteran. Can you add something to all of what all of them have said and some, highlight some advantages of NAIF?
So far as what I've understood is like apna time aayega kind of like, but to my mind like we are about to get birth, like we have not even born. In context of the size of the fund that is running worldwide around $7 to $8 trillion, and we'll be touching around $250 billion. So in terms of size, we are not even 3%, and in next 10 years, suppose we aspire to be the second largest economy in the world, or maybe third, then you should assume at least 25% share and 25% share of the expanded market. So you are talking of like geometric progression kind of a growth coming. Coming back to what Vivek was talking, like as an investor, like we are tired of, including myself, of hearing that you will get 10%, 12% CAGR if you hold for 10 years and 12 years, and that's quite a large kind of a holding period to have 12% CAGR, and particularly with a year like 2008 and 18 in between, where you see 30%, 40%, 45%, maybe in some case 2008 show on a Nifty basis it show a drawdown of 65%, and Warren Buffett shares, for example, Berkshire, in its lifetime it has drawn down to 50% from the top all the time. So whatever said and done, like it looks kind of intellectually convincing that buy and hold gives you money and all that. But ultimately, as an investor, even I agree with Vivek, we should be looking at absolute return. So when we are looking at absolute return, see, I would like to highlight a point why this erraticity in the return. Because of the technological disruption, like earlier the business used to survive for 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. You could take actually a long view, saying that there is a sustainable moat and some sort of an advantage, competitive advantage. But now the world is changing so fast with technological development, like every third year or fourth year, you have to rethink your business model. You need to actually think whether your model actually exists or it doesn't exist. So that is the fast-paced development that is happening. Today Ola is there, the other day Uber is there, someday Zomato is there, someday Panda was one of the best delivery guys. Like they shut down and now they are looking at Swiggy and then reopening. So this is the pace at which the environment is changing and the business is moving to the newer segments and a new way of making money. Older ways are not making you money. So to take as a fundamental analyst, to take a view on a business for a sustainable period of time and take a view for a decade or 2 decades, it's becoming increasingly difficult. Like something like, for example, Warren Buffett's investment in Mastercard or something like that. Right? They've invested because of some sustainable mode they have. Now with Apple Card coming in, they are actually virtually giving everything free of fees and free of interest, because they are sitting on $650 billion of cash. So that has kind of started to destroy the moat which MasterCard was enjoying, or maybe Visa is enjoying. So in next 5 years, I'll not be surprised if Warren Buffett silently sells his shares off, because the kind of size he holds, he won't be able to get an exit on this. So probably those were the times where business was surviving. So these are the times where business are changing very fast. And we are looking at absolute return scenario, then we don't have a choice but to look at alternative investments. See, to get a 12% CAGR, if I have to see a drawdown of 65%, I think it's a bad trade to have. So only choice we are left with is to explore the alternative ways of making money. One of the easiest way currently, for example, to look at alternative in category 3 is going long short. Going long short is like you can have n number of ways of going long. So you can have a market neutral long short, or you can hedge with the index, or you can be naked long short, or a net long, or a long. There are multiple ways of, and with the advent of even options, like you don't have a choice but to go to those markets. So there are no other vehicles that allow you to do that, right? So mutual fund can only buy and hold, and again they are restricted by the regulations of like having certain number of cash. And with mutual fund, the greatest limitation that I've found is the most of the entry is timed by the investors and not by the fund manager. So you are at the mercy of investor when he chooses to invest.
Yes.
And at those point of time, even if you are finding market suppose overvalued, you can only keep 5% or 7% what is mandated by SEBI as cash. Otherwise, you have to deploy. You don't have a choice. So the major work, which is the timing of the market, is done by the people who do not know how to time it. And majority of us as a professional also fail to time it most of the times. So those people are not in the business of timing. We are in the business of timing, still we can't time it. And we are expecting them to make a good return on mutual funds. And mutual funds, sahi hai, kind of, we keep on always selling them all that. Of course, it must be good for some people. Only form of investment that I've found rewarding in mutual fund to me is dollar cost averaging, which is the simplest form of SIPs. That is the retail people should do. Anybody HNI looking at some lump sum investments has to look at alternative investment funds. Like we were just in our office, for example, we were working for some AIF model for one of my clients who were looking to invest some family funds. So what we found is if we combine around 75% risk-free instrument with 25% long short, we could achieve 24% CAGR with intra-year zero drawdown. Intra-year. So I'm not talking maybe in a live environment you could draw down a bit, but point to point, at the end of the year, you won't be losing, there won't be a single losing year, and you'll be making 24%, and I'm talking pre-tax.
And let me tell you, he's a quantitative guy, so he doesn't give numbers just like that.
So when I say numbers, I actually go to the past and I see the data and I just make the models and then talk numbers. So they are not all, they are actually conservative. I got a number of 29, and I'm saying 24, and I'm saying realistically you can achieve 18 to 21. That is what you can probably, because now even this guy is listening, his guy is listening. These are all institutional guys who will take the edge away from us. So, so probably even if you can settle at 18 to 21%, I think it's a decent return to have. And post-tax, if you can have 12, 13, 14%, and I believe me, it's not going to be possible with buy and hold. Buy and hold days are gone. And AIF funds, I think the time has come. Everybody should seriously look into investment. The only problem with AIF is like it's restricted to HNIs, like they have to have a ticket size of 1 crore plus. So that is again a limitation. But
to generally think of, and it's all open to all of us and maybe someone, like what are the available instruments to short is we are only restricted to the futures list. Probably one of the big issue, or if it was the issue, is the SLBM market, which is not developed.
I think they are experimenting with this delivery-based system. So the next thing, like once you have everything delivery-based, like now physical settlement. So the next, probably they will have this SLBM market, like to completely develop
Coming to the US market,
LBM market, LBM market, I would say.
I don't know, any of you have traded the US markets, but how does the SLBM have the edge of the short side of it? As in, obviously you can lend shares and you do your shorts. So you think something like
I
that?
think short-
Borrow to short.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
With
Sorry,
the
borrow
SLB,
for
if
borrow
Basically,
I
yeah.
do-
You hold shares, so if I use the lending, we'll borrow and
So in India, we have an advantage of, for example, rolling over shorts. So we get a premium to roll over. In like foreign market, you actually pay rent
Yes.
on. So it works other way down. So it's about to get reversed. Those good days are about to get
SLBM,
over.
I remember, was introduced 2011.
Yeah. So you actually pay to borrow the shares. Like currently, like we as a short guy, we get actually ulta badla, what we call it. Right? Always we get the premium because we are shorting. We are squaring it here, and when you are short in the market, you actually make money out of like 0.5 or 0.6, whatever be the arbitrage spreads are. That is what you make. But with LBM and its SLBM, everything in place, you'll have to probably start paying for it, right? So your returns are going to compress once all these things start happening.
Before we hand over to you guys to ask questions to the panel, I have one more important question for you, Gaurav. Because the experience you have with handling, tell us what are the real disadvantages of AIF structure. So, and obviously, Vivek, Anil, you can add to that as well. But the structure itself, I am sure there are inherent disadvantages which I can see.
Correct. Yeah. So basically, the AIF space is right now quite restricted in the sense that you can do a MF with 5,000 rupees or 1,000 even, I guess. You can go to a PMS and open an account with 25 lakh rupees. And the minimum ticket size in AIF is around 1 CR. And on top of that, Cat 1 and Cat 2, which is the sovereign and the VC space, they have been given tax pass-through. So basically, the vehicle does not pay tax. It is the final investor who will pay tax on the returns. In Cat 3, they have not given pass-through taxation as of now, though industry talks have been going on for quite some time. What it will do is it will bring parity to mutual fund, it will bring parity to PMS, it will bring parity to AIF structures in terms of taxation.
First, the AIF will pay tax, I guess.
Correct.
And
So what happens is, let's say that you put in some fund with an AIF. Now what happens is that the fund will be directed at the AIF level, at that structure only. Yes, and you will get a post-tax return only. So let's say that you could, if it were kind of looked upon as a business income, which is basically the case of PMS, then you could basically deduct a lot of other expenses of running a business from where you are generating that cash and parking it. So it becomes.
And I am an investor, and if I have other losses, I could set off at least if it is passed through me. If it is direct, I can at least set off. Here, there is no set off. Government is sure to. If AIF is making money, government
But
can cut
it's
there.
like it's going to be tax-free in the hands of investor, right? Whatever.
Yeah. It's tax free at the end, but they cannot set it off.
I know,
against
they cannot
the-
set it
And
loss.
then it is taxed at the maximum marginal rate. So right now that would come out to be
33 point,
35.88%.
Okay, 35.88.
So it's the maximum tax you can pay in the Indian jurisdiction. After knowing it, even I didn't like it.
They have left no scope for Devang to plan
There
tax.
is no escape basically, because today if you are dealing not on AIF but in your own capacity, of course apart from the tax loss set off of some other head, but even today, if, like Vishal mentioned some strategies running in the morning. On that strategy, you have to land up paying maximum marginal rate. So I think that the tax.
Yeah, but
It's a
it's
level
against the
playing
long
field. You are
only,
not-
right?
You're not getting,
Against the
you're
long
not
only.
getting a option to set off against any other head where you might have some loss. That's the only thing. Otherwise, as a rate, I think you can't really say, okay, charge me lower rate.
That's absolutely.
If they do lower rate, then everything will flood into AIF. Will become the the global markets will be suddenly seeing why India is so large.
I think
And
that,
probably the last point that I wanted to make is basically the leverage.
Yeah.
So the leverage has been restricted to a leverage of 2. which essentially means, and when they say leverage, they essentially say a long future, a long call, and a short put is to be counted as +1, and short future, short call, and long put is to be counted as -1. So you have to remain within a leverage of 2. So which essentially means if you do a straddle, you are nearly on the limit of breaching the leverage. But it's very prudential in that sense that at least when the AIS are going to start right now and they are getting some amount of serious cash in, it's prudential on part of behalf of SEBI to say that you can restrict it to a leverage of 2, because what happens is that if there is any blow up because of mismanagement,
It won't happen, I guess, because
so
of
that chances are severely restricted per se.
But if you like I mentioned about the model, if you sensibly kind of club it with tax-free instruments or maybe risk-free instruments, probably, of course your fund size has to be larger, and you allocate only that portion of the risk you want to take to, and that take 5x leverage also. Then also effectively the leverage is only 2x because of the something parked as a tax-free or risk-free instrument. No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that this is, since I'm able to, I've worked it out.
Barbell-like strategy, which they say is,
Because as you rightly said, people want to have risk-adjusted returns. If you play only the leverage part of it, the returns are astronomical. But then the drawdowns are also astronomical. So that is why you sensibly mix it with risk-free instruments, so that your intra-year there could be a drawdown, but at the year end you are always above drawdown levels and you make 20-24%.
this is a typical barbell, like they say, like in a way, which is 80-90% is extreme low risk and 10% you take high risk.
I think most of the AIFs do that.
They do that. They do that. They're doing the
That's
arb and
exactly
stuff.
what I'm coming to, that most of the AIF that I've seen, they don't do fully long shot, okay? They do arbitrages. More than 40-50% is they play with arbitrages.
I don't think that's not correct, because it depends on vehicle to vehicle and the strategy that you are running. There are certain AIF, like we have got 2 long short AIFs currently and 4 long only.
Okay.
So in the long only, it's just structurally you buy and hold, don't really enter.
But you lever in the long only also? It's in futures or it's in cash?
No,
Cash.
in the long only, it's cash equity only. Okay. Close-ended. And hence the tax benefit is there. We don't pay maximum marginal rate, we pay capital gains tax.
Oh.
In the long short, we are forced to pay maximum marginal rate, except for some core allocation which we showcase as a capital gains. But there are some strategies who run combination of arbitrage and some special situations or some directional. There are some funds who run pure long only.
Pure long.
And some which can take a active call on the market based on whether it's a fundamental or again a combination of fundamental and technical.
Okay.
That, okay, I want to have a net long of, let's say, 120%.
Okay.
And balance I will short it. So there you can have, if you are
So
feeling
it's
very
basically
positive.
product mixes. You are able to have a structured product.
Exactly. So the platform is such that within the 2x leverage, like you mentioned, then you can do.
You're basically
multiple things
structuring your
based on
product
where
to.
you feel your algo or your skill set can help you deliver. Suppose you feel that if there is a negative trend in the market, I want to go 150% net short. This will enable you to do that and make the maximum money out of it. So if you feel that this is going to be a 2008 type kind of a year.
And does it not help that a mutual fund, as I understand, has to largely be invested? Khalsa ji, you would know, they have to be in cash at least 80-90% of the time or something. So even if the market is falling, they have no option other than to not be deployed. Is that correct? Whereas in a AIF, you could exit and sit on cash and put that in a low risk, interest bearing.
Not even low risk, you can short the market. No?
Or you
And
can
make the
short
money
also,
from the short side,
absolutely,
basically.
absolutely.
One more point,
with
if I
AIF,
can
you have
add.
a lot of flexibility with like cash levels and even the direction of the market.
One more point, if I can add to what your the point that you were making, Vivek. If you look at the portfolios of all the publicly available mutual fund portfolios, you would find typically those small holdings that they have. So the fund manager, even though he may have a negative opinion, he would still be constrained to hold the stock because of the larger consideration that he can't go beyond 90% invested in the markets. So effectively, the fund manager knows and has a view that I'm negative on the stock, but he still can't go to zero. Take a large index name, for instance. So this is one hindrance a fund manager typically gets into, where views are not getting implemented. And the view many a times does turn out to be right for other external considerations. AIF, because being truly a long short fund, removes this kind of an yeah.
So one argument in favor of mutual fund would be, does it not bring some sort of stability to the market? Like the kind of smart people that we have around managing mutual funds.
It's a two-edged sword. So risk return is a two-edged sword. If you want a stable return, you get a lesser return.
Suppose like all the smarter people are managing mutual fund as well. Like AIF said there will be smarter people and there are mutual fund guys who are smarter. Suppose mutual fund is given that flexibility of like liquidating beyond even 90%, for example.
No,
Then there will not there be a stampede? Like once all the expert opine on the same side, then will not be there be any stampede of situation like that?
No, there are two or three things. One is first of all, it is because the investing class who actually invest in mutual fund does expect a stabler kind of returns. So one, the investing quantum is expectation is there. Second is because you're an institution, you also are supposed to behave in a certain manner, have a certain amount of risk management team. Any mutual fund, any life insurance company has a 4, 5, 10 member team who sits in risk management and whose job 24/7 is to do this. Right? Constrain the fund manager, constrain the investment meeting, wherever they feel a sectoral limit or a stock limit is going beyond a certain level. So these are checks and balances that are designed to protect the investor's interest. But at the same time, because they are constraining the view not being implemented, at times they tend to reduce returns.
I think, sorry, but I'll just take slightly different approach to just clarify. The SEBI rule does not mention that any stock you have to hold in the portfolio. If the fund manager does not have a view, don't short it. You can have zero, definitely. There is no...
But typically what happens, say a large index weight like a Reliance, for example, right?
But again, sir, I agree. Maybe if it's a large weight, let's say ICICI, Kotak, RIL, HDFC, if it's a large weight, the fund manager might be tempted not to have zero. That is his or her risk appetite. If I have zero and if the stock is keeping on running, my portfolio will tend to underperform the benchmark. Right. But there is no regulatory requirement that you must have.
No, I meant there are two layers to it. One is regulatory from what actually SEBI talks about it, and one is the internal requirements. So all fund houses have their internal requirements in terms of, like for instance, if you're investing in an insurance company, there in the insurance industry, actually there are regulatory requirements as compared to a mutual fund.
But always of the upper cap, not lower cap. So in
but lower cap is, it's an internal thing. What if your call goes wrong for whatever reason? Markets are markets, right? You have a view, but for whatever reason, it's based on certain set of assumptions. If those assumptions don't turn out to be right, what do you do? Then I can give you an example. It happened in 2008 when the Lehman crisis was happening. One of the large funds, in a particular stock or over a period of time, didn't actually manage the cash levels well. And the underperformance that you saw in that 1 year took them 5 years to replicate. Now, if you're a fund manager or if you're an AMC, what would you prefer? Would you have a set of stable risk regulations which prevent that kind of a thing, one mistake and repenting for 5 years? Or would you have a slightly lesser alpha and that you can manage and sell on the marketing side?
I think
the trade-off is that.
I think point taken. Yeah. The other thing what people would not want to know is these days only index works. I'm sure. I think one of the chart Vishal showed was index versus your short only. So I would want to pose a question. It's open to anyone who takes it. If there is an ETF, if there is an ETF, index ETF, and versus you want to do a long short strategy or somewhere do a long short in AIF, how would you go about it? I mean, is investing in ETF is a wiser idea, which most of us now, looking at trends in the Western countries or developed countries, we think, okay, this is the way to go. You just invest in mutual fund, छोड़ो, सिर्फ index ETF में डालो, management fees भी कम है, everything is aligned, and rather than go here and then your maximum marginal tax rates and all that, I mean, how would you equate?
I think, see, to a certain extent what you mentioned is correct, that an index fund, again, even an index fund is a mutual fund only, so it's not that mutual fund chodo and index fund karo. Index fund is a type of or a category of a mutual fund itself, which in some way avoids any human bias of taking any active view on a particular stock or a sector, but it creates some particular index For simplicity's sake, right now what we are seeing majority in the Indian market is a plain vanilla index, like a Nifty 50, Sensex. But there can be some strategy indices, like on Nifty, instead of Nifty 50, we do Nifty equal weight.
Yeah.
Or some other smart beta, like some quant-based approach, let's say momentum strategy. You create an index around it and then highlight that these are the rules and this is what the fund will at all points of time mirror. However, again, all of these strategies can be one complementary portion of the overall client's allocation into equities because it's giving you long only, as Vivek mentioned, and as we discussed that this is the long only part of it. So, in a certain market situation like 2008, 2012, 13, where market is negative overall, irrespective of whatever you do, even if it's a simple product, but it's long only, so it is
Yes.
bound to
You're bound to get a hit.
deliver negative return.
Yes.
So to have the complementary approach completed, if you add some element of a AIF Cat 3 long short fund, which can short and benefit from the falling market also, that can work in a good way.
Good.
So I feel that passively managed index funds are very good. Globally, they have been very successful. In fact, they have been the drivers of the overall asset management pool of money. Similar thing will happen in India also gradually, but it should at all points of time be used as a complementary strategy to complete your asset allocation.
But having said that, AIF will not kind of fizzle out. The way it is going up, you think it अपना time आ गया
No,
तो चलेगा.
let me tell you, Devang, there is serious shortage of talents in this industry.
Okay.
So they will be snatching around you in a few years. Like people will be snatching you, either you or Vivek. Like, मेरा काम करो, मेरा काम करो. So so probably you are in the right space currently, and stay put. Simple. Wait for your turn. It's about the time, like because the kind of expansion that is happening in financial savings, and there are very little options left. Like even risk-free is not risk-free.
Yeah.
See, if you are
Good
saying
one.
AAA rated of Greece was risk-free, 2011, like you saw how it happened, and probably again now it is. Now let me tell you, Greece is trading below US as a yield. So this is the kind of volatility that debt space is seeing. So we are better off being in this long short, and like preconceived notion of actually risk-free is not anymore risk-free, including US Treasuries, because the way the yields are moving up and down every now and then, you are seeing huge losses in the bond portfolio.
Yeah.
So, like,
And one more interesting use about the ETFs, as you mentioned, for even a lot of our friends over here who are running quant-based algos, that the ETF can be also used as a tool for running some algos and making money out of it, very often in an arbitrage type approach,
Oh, okay.
where you are going one leg of the ETF and on the other side the individual stocks and making money out of it. Though it's not so efficient in Indian context right now, it is a little bit expensive to
I think
put
some of
both
the quant guys
many
should
people are
take
doing
note
it,
of
I'm
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Many people might be doing it, and maybe you can share more idea because you are
So
running that.
basically, in 2008, what Reliance ETFs today are, which Goldman Sachs were, and which Benchmark earlier were. Benchmark basically put up a prospectus with SEBI, a draft prospectus with SEBI to run a ETF which would do a covered call kind of a strategy. Now these strategies have been pioneered by CBOE, where they have covered call strategies, buy right strategies and so on. And they have over a period of last 30-35 years demonstrated that these strategies, very simple passive strategies in that sense, they deliver a similar kind of return with far lower risk of a drawdown. Now even these kind of strategies were essentially denied to an Indian investor. Recently mutual funds were allowed to short 25% of their positions in covered call kind of a scenario. But if you ever want to run such kind of a portfolio, which is very, very, what you call basic and can be, are basically passive strategies in that sense, they can still only be run under the AIF umbrella. And one very important point that I wanted to raise is that in an AIF, and what Nassim Taleb over the last 1.5 years has made very, very, with a great deal of clarity, he has basically conveyed to everybody, is that is the fund manager, is he invested in the fund? Is there skin in the game? Does he believe what he is doing? Is he putting his own money in that fund? And AIF Cat 3 or AIFs by definition, the
Requires
sponsor
you
of the
to.
fund has to basically put in minimum of 5% of the corpus.
Yeah.
So in that sense, if the investor, if the fund manager or the fund, the person who is running the fund or the group who is running the fund, they have that kind of a
Skin in the game.
skin in the game.
Size is 20 crore and the fund manager needs to have at least a crore in
1
that.
CR,
Is it like that? Right.
But 5% of the fund till
10 crores is the maximum. So
like
even if
10
you run,
crores
let's say
is
1,000,
10 crores the maximum which the fund manager
the
can have.
sponsor has to
So the
mandatorily
to
invest.
CR.
mandatory. So the fund size maximum, is there a limit to the size
So
of fund? No.
fund size can be anything.
Okay.
Total number of investors that a particular AIF can take is 1,000. So if there are 1,000 investors, if you have 1,000 investors, then you have to stop. Then you can't take anything beyond that. Then you have to launch a separate AIF.
I'll throw open to the people to ask some questions.
Yeah,
I
have
think
a
I
question
spotted
here.
this guy.
My question, thank you for all for your insight. My question is, might be on the minds of a lot of people here and might address the elephant in the room. You know, with the democratization of the tools available for market analysis and the growth of the algo conventions and all sorts of gatherings of such as smart people, you're going to have people who have ideas, innovative strategies. They might not be associated with institutions that can run these on a large scale. They might be individuals or small firms that are doing this. Essentially the Kirana stores of the algo world, right? So what is the view of the regulator to, Rakesh ji mentioned about the geometric growth that the Indian investment, alternative investment needs to have. Is it going to take bringing in these guys into the fold to grow the market in that manner? And what is the regulator's view on that, on these guys?
So, to answer your question, if you can't beat them, you have to be with them. So, either you grow big enough where you can actually institutionalize your business, or you run strategy which are not scalable enough. Like, for example, Vishal showed the strategy. If you put 100 crore into that, you will start killing yourself. So, institution will never get attracted to those kind of a situation. So, you have to find pockets of your own niche where institution don't have an edge. And suppose you want to have the edge of an institution, then you become institution. That is the only choice we have.
If I were to add to that, can we say that if someone to run a long short strategy like Vishal's or a variation of it, could one do it as an investment advisory license till if not a AIF of a crore, but say a ticket sizes of 5, 10, 20, 25 lakh under an investment advisory license? Would that be something what you kind of hinting at?
I guess that's what I'm trying to refer to. People running client money without having an AIF structure. What is the regulator's view on that?
Yeah, so basically, SEBI came out with this investment advisors regulation, and which was a pretty good thing that they did. Somebody basically wrote a letter to SEBI, and in their informal guidance, they said that we have not envisioned this kind of a role. And 2 months later, you see that there is a investment advisor's license. And what it did was it gave a lot of credibility to a person who is offering his services to people to run their strategies. And not everybody can have a minimum of 20 CR corpus to run a AIF, or not everybody can have a net worth of 50 crores to launch a mutual fund. What if I, as a small trader who has an outperformance in the market, wants to offer my skill set to a few select people? So investment advisory license has been a very, very good trend that has been set by SEBI. You have to basically invest as a advisor. If you are an individual, maybe the license fees is some 10,000 rupees.
No, I think 1 lakh rupee and 5 lakh rupees for corporate.
I think for individual is 1 lakh, and for LLPs and any corporate, you have a 5 lakh for 5 years, and you can offer your services under investment advisories. Regulation is pretty much clear. There should not be conflict of interest, or there are some guidelines on execution and all that. But it's pretty much doable. So people like you and me who don't want to launch, for example, AIF, can of course work through investment advisory license, provided their compliance requirement is pretty tight and you need to adhere to that. And I think we should. Why should not we? If we mean to be in the business for a longer period of time, we should kind of stick to the compliances. They are like there is a strict audit requirement, there is a strict Like whatever calls you give, you have to keep a trail of them.
Risk profiling.
You have to
whatever.
risk profile your client. All this you need to do. So there is no choice on that, and I think we must adhere to that. There is no choice on that.
I think next time we will have someone from SEBI. Due to long weekend, we couldn't get them. Otherwise, we were trying to get someone from SEBI onto the convention. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Samir.
Yeah. So basically, the funds are deposited as cash to you by the investor. Then what you can do is you can put them in any kind of collateral that the exchange basically takes. So if you do a cash equivalent, which is FDs or cash, you can do that. If you do liquid funds, probably the haircut is around 10%. Arbitrage funds, you can put money into arbitrage funds and then place them as collateral. The haircut is around 7%. So they are deemed more, what do you call, credible than the liquid funds themselves.
So you are saying that it's 2x
Rightly so,
leverage, but
rightly so,
actually
because of the recent debacle that happened. Even liquid fund, like overnight, there was a haircut of 3%. So arbitrage funds are like.
Yeah, you can just put cash also. Yeah. 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 And again, if you go to slightly more sensitive and more complexity of the AIF, SEBI has about a year and a half or 2 years back permitted NRIs and FPIs also to invest in AIF. So if your Cat 3 or any AIF has accepted even 1 rupee of money from a FPI or NRI, then that AIF cannot invest into a liquid mutual fund.
Ah.
So that becomes a little bit again challenging how to place the margin. But yeah, otherwise, bank guarantee of course could have been a wonderful thing, but that's not.
Yes, Samit, the kind of leverage that we enjoy as a broker will never be enjoyed by AIF. So forget that idea of converting a broking house into an AIF house. It doesn't happen, because even if you say you offer a bank guarantee, you have basically put a FD of 50%, right? And then you lever 5 times of that always. Like if you go long completely, whatever your requirement. But this kind of leverage is not permissible in AIF. So you are not looking at a scenario where there's apple and orange, like in terms of purely because of the leverage.
Few last questions. I think the gentleman there was asking a question.
Hi, so Manish here. I myself run a long short fund in prop. So the cost structure is different there. So what I want to understand is that if you run in a formerly AIF where you have distribution cost and all other costs, can you hear me? Yeah. So what is the return that is expected so that post tax it is acceptable to the investor? What part of it would come from fixed income side and what part from the trading side?
Okay,
And
I would like to really answer that. Are you finished?
yeah, and the second part was, since AIF long short has, fund manager based style, so he would need some sort of commitment of the fund, right? So are these close ended or is there a minimum lock in time? Because though they are absolute return, there would be drawdowns between months. And what is the acceptable drawdown in such funds?
Correct. So I'll answer the second part first, because that's a very relevant question. So in AIF, you can have a closed-ended fund and an open-ended fund. So the flavor of the season, as of now, if you see, is AIFs investing in small or medium caps, where they see a lot of value, but a lot of mutual funds are leaving them. So there's a lot of value that the fund managers are seeing, and they are doing a closed-ended 3-year, where basically, as Anil said, that the tax advantage is also there to the end client. Now, if you look at the long-short kind of a piece, where basically you are investing not into the securities but into the derivatives, then there is then the lock-in period there is no lock-in period per se. You can invest for any amount of duration, and the taxation remains the MMR per se, and they are mostly open-ended. anything you want to add on the second part? The question is,
The expected return, so that you can take care of the distribution and the
So,
fund management cost and the acceptable drawdown.
See, whenever I go and make a presentation to a client, they always talk about returns, and I start the reverse, like what kind of losses you can actually bear. So we talk of drawdowns first. Like it's basically a game where your risk and reward has to be in play. Like if you are okay, comfortable with 11%, probably he'll say there is a drawdown of 0.5% or the 1%. The moment you say I want 21, you should be prepared for 3 to 4% drawdown. The moment you say I want 30, you should be prepared for 7%. The moment you say 100%, there are instruments that give you 100% return, but that you should be able to draw down your capital by 25%. So anything above 1:3, to my mind, like whatever acceptable loss in either in percentage term or in absolute term. Say you can afford to lose say 50 lakh of rupees. Then you have to reverse engineer and probably try and make 1.5 crore out of it. So that is a 1:3. That is how it should be worked out. That is how it works. Otherwise, basically, in a world where even risk-free is not risk-free, so we don't talk of no drawdowns or a zero drawdown or like it doesn't exist anymore. Even liquid funds, like if they open with a gap of 3% down, where is the security? So, see, apart from looking at drawdown or absolute risk, what one must look at it is the recovery time. How fast you recover. See, if somebody is looking for a kind of Alice in Wonderland kind of situation when there are no drawdowns and only returns, then we shouldn't be here. Like expectation from an investor perspective has to be realistic in terms, and they should be overestimating kind of. They tend to overestimate when it comes to return and underestimate when it comes to risk. So exactly, we should be doing exactly reverse of that. We should actually, when we are able to, suppose, take a loss of 50 lakh of rupees, we must say we will be able to take a loss of 25 lakh rupees. And what we are expecting as a 24%, you should scale down to say 18%. That is how it works. And believe me, if you keep your expectation down on both sides, probably you are in for a good smooth ride. Otherwise, if you keep on stretching expectation on return and putting down expectation on the drawdown, you are in for a very blood pressure kind of situation. You are already shooting your blood pressure all the time.
I think we have time for one last question.
Yes.
We have quite a few. 1 second. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask Mr. Rajesh, when he's talking about a return of 18-20% with a drawdown of, I mean, no annual drawdown, how do you do it?
Basically, see, there are some long-short strategies which are high return and high risk strategies. Many people are not able to take the drawdowns of this strategy. Suppose I give you something which gives you, say, 30 lakhs as a return and 10 lakhs as a drawdown, for example. And I want to achieve that purpose of zero drawdown. I have to have fixed instrument which earns me 10 lakhs a year. That is what the model is, right? So when you earn 10 lakhs a year through a fixed instrument, for example, you say invest 1 crore, 20 lakhs, and you earn, say, 10 lakhs out of it. And you run a long-short strategy which is like 10 is to, say, 40. It loses 10, but eventually it makes 40. So all in all, if you combine that, so you end up making 24 to 30% kind of a return with a zero drawdown in end of the year. Intra-year, when you have not earned your interest and your strategy go into a drawdown, you have to bear that M2M losses and all that. But eventually, if you are disciplined enough, you run it for a longer period of time. There are strategies which end up being positive year on year all the time. And they are all in the alternative space, they are all on the long short space, they are all on the option sides, they are all on the bank nifty sides. So this plain vanilla investment does not offer this kind of opportunity.
But is there anyone in India who's giving that kind of return with such less drawdown?
I'm saying
I think you should meet him during tea.
Anil, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there must be a lot of people doing that.
Hi. I actually wanted to ask a lot about your long-short strategies that you guys were talking about earlier. So how do you land up actually benchmarking your return for a long-short strategy? Because like you mentioned, your longer set of stocks, shorter set of stocks, you've actually removed the market risk element out of it. how do you attribute when this kind of strategy should do well or not do well?
So if you ask me honestly, I would prefer no benchmark. In absolute return world, the word absolute means no benchmark, in essence. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever you say at the end, we all look at the market as the index. That the Nifty or the Sensex is the market for most of us. At the end, it's just a combination of 30 or 50 stocks out of a whole basket of 400,000, whatever stock, 3,000 stocks.
3,500.
5,000 listed stock. It's not the market, right? It's one extract, which again keeps changing. If you see the components of Nifty now, why are the ETFs doing so well? And they will continue to do well eventually, is the way it's rejigged. The components keep changing. So it's the Nifty today is not the Nifty 3 years back or 8 years back, and it will not. It will keep changing. So it's high frequency change, if I were to say, right? And there are some people in the world who are here looking at absolute returns only. So we unfortunately have to benchmark. But if you look at someone like Vineet, who's sitting here from Marathon Trends PMS, Atul Suri's fund, runs a long only, and he is written on the website, I have no benchmarks. I ride the trend, I get out when the trend changes. I have no benchmarks. I would love to be in that kind of world.
Last one.
See, I would give you a better, probably a more real picture. See, investors investors always have a recency bias. So when I was basically conceptualizing what kind of a fund to create for our AIF the first time round, I said a gross return of 14% pre-tax, and people laughed at me. A few people seriously laughed at me, and they said, last year I made 30%, and that was tax-free. And can you beat anything like that? And I tried to give them the philosophy of long short for a long time, and I continue to do so because my conviction, because their conviction was so strong, my conviction even being stronger, that there is a serious requirement for a product like this. And then when we launched last year and the market scenario was the way it is, they were like really wanting to know more about these strategies. And one more thing that I wanted to add is that AIF's Cat3, we are just looking at the equity perspective. But what you can do is you can marry equity, you can add commodity, interest rates, you can add currency. And that is the kind of, product that you need, which is basically resilient to market volatility from all perspectives.
All weather kinds.
Calls it as all-weather portfolio, like non-correlated strategy, different asset class, keep on generating. So ultimately, anybody wants to have exposure to all-weather portfolio, which like generally doesn't draw down much and give consistent return. Of course, moderate return will come, 15%, 16%. That should be a good return. But that is possible only through AIF if you combine commodity, currency, options, indices, and probably world indices and world over currency. Everything you've combined, there is a possibility of reducing drawdown to virtually nil and generate some consistent.
The all-weather has returned about 14% last year in 2018.
Yes.
The daily value, and effectively they trade about 150 markets worldwide, and effectively they says that I think we are risk-free because we are always long some countries and short some countries. Technically, it's probably more risk-free than the AAA rated US government debt.
I think we have time for one last question.
Anil, this is for you. I remember asking you this question about 2 years back. I'm going to ask that again. We talked about maturity of the market, ETF investments, and we are talking about leverage and going short. And in US, there are inverse ETFs which take care of, if the market is going down, I buy ETFs, so that is not a leverage product per se. Is anything changed in those last 2 years, or we are still at the status quo?
Very good memory, I must say, and absolutely, I completely agree. A lot of development has happened over these past 2 years, whether you talk of regulatory framework and whether you talk of the maturity of the market. However, as of now, because the ETFs are housed in the mutual fund platform, not on the AIF or anything of that sort, my personal view is it will still take a little bit time. We have approached SEBI in multiple angles, us as an individual house, as a DSP, as an industry body. There is a body of mutual funds called AMFI. We have a committee for passive funds on that, through that. through some global best practices on CFA platform, that this is how you should look at evolving the market. And they are quite in sync now. Any point of time, I think they will bring it to the market, but it's still, I would feel, little bit time.
But whatever form they come in, they will not be called leveraged.
I think I guess that's all the time we have for this. And thanks a lot, Anil. Thanks a lot, Gaurav, Rakesh ji, and Vivek as usual. Thanks a lot.